Today's Gospel reading is well known as a story, but it's inspiring as a challenge to our faith and our discipleship. It tells how Jesus took his disciples out to the peace and quiet of Caesarea Philippi. We'd probably say out to the middle of nowhere, where he could just quietly talk to them about who he was and what it was going to mean to him to be a suffering Messiah. But he also wanted to ask them who they thought he was and what it would mean to them to be disciples of a suffering Messiah. And so he chatted to them for a while about what people were saying about him. And he gradually got around to asking them, "Who do you think I am?" And Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Now, I think Mark wrote this well-known story partly to show how the disciples gradually came to discover who Jesus really was. But I think it's primarily written to show what is involved and demanded of us. What is demanded of us when we see Jesus for who and what he really is? When we see that he is the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of the living God. But in Jewish tradition, the Messiah was expected to be an anointed king in the line of David, who would free Israel from Roman oppression, who would purify the people and restore Israel's independence and glory amongst the nations. And in calling Jesus the Messiah, Peter probably was thinking of something like, "I think you're the one who's going to restore holiness to the nation, re-establish Israel's supremacy amongst the nations, and usher in a new era of peace." Well, Peter got the title right, but he got the meaning wrong. And so immediately, Jesus began to redefine their expectation. He began to explain that what lay ahead for him as Messiah was rejection and suffering and death. And Peter took him aside and he sort of said, No, Jesus, this is not the way it's supposed to be. The Messiah is supposed to get rid of the Romans, not get killed by them. And Jesus' response to Peter was rather harsh. He said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You think of things from the human point of view, not as God thinks." And then Jesus said to them all, "Anyone who wishes to be a follower of mine must leave self behind, take up their cross, and follow me. Because the road ahead leads to Gethsemane and Calvary. And so taking up a cross means being willing to suffer the consequences of faithfully following Jesus, putting Jesus' call and his service ahead of our own comfort and security. It means committing ourselves to him and spending our life in genuine service to others for his sake. Our knowledge of Jesus comes pretty much from what Mark and Matthew and Luke and John wrote in the pages of the New Testament. But it wasn't written for the sake of history, but it was written to convey to future generations and to us the lasting significance of who Jesus was and is. And it's written as a means and a place where we can still encounter Jesus today. And to encounter Jesus in the pages of the New Testament, the Gospel writers told the story of Jesus' birth to show that he was unique in his relationship to God. And they told of his temptations to show that although he was unique in his relationship to God, he was also fully human, and his sinlessness was really an achievement. And they told of his ministry to show his loving concern for all people, to show his acceptance of the socially outcast, and his utter dedication to the task of winning us back to God by showing what God is like and that God is worthy of our highest love and our most devoted service. And his death, or more precisely his life, leading up to and including his death, shows what it means to love God and our neighbour fully. And it shows how far God's love was prepared to go for us. And they told the story of his resurrection as God's yes to the life and ministry of Jesus. His life and ministry were vindicated. The resurrection showed that he was the Christ after all. And the resurrection shows that God was there all of the time, especially in the suffering and death of Jesus. And all of this is contained in the gospel records, and it still enables us today. It enables us to encounter the person of Jesus. And I believe that right now, for us to read and hear and think about the life and words of Jesus is to be confronted and challenged by the very love of God. As we hear Jesus' words at the end of our gospel reading today, where he said, "If you try to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you let yourself be lost for my sake, you will find your true self, your real self, the sort of person God wants you to be. And I think we find our true self by responding to Jesus as one who could say of himself, "If you have seen me, you have seen God the Father," even on the cross. And as one before whom Thomas could kneel and say, "My Lord and my God," and one who even today draws forth a response from us, like Isaac Watts wrote in his great hymn, "Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all." And I believe that the Jesus of history can still be for us the Christ of experience, and something like a personal friend who's always there. For me, there are no audible voices or visions, just an unseen friendship of one who is always there to call, to inspire, to challenge, and just be the driving force in our lives. And I think that finding that unseen friendship of Jesus as something that is real in our lives is like finding the greatest treasure, the pearl of great price. Jesus can still be our personal friend, an unseen companion, one who is always there, even when we don't recognise him. Anyway, that's my experience, and I hope it's yours too. We'll sing now the hymn 342, "When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride."